Fortunately, we were able to louder.
Yes.
Okay. Because fortunately, I reached the time I can give my presentation because
your expenses.
so many questions. So I thought my talk will be skipped and I will enjoy it without stress. Nevertheless, let's look at the talk of the migration route and hybridization with dogs during this rapid expansion we are observing now. On the other hand, it's not moving. Perhaps I put just one slide. This one. So because I knew that the talk will be about hybridization, domestication, so I decided to divide my presentation into 4 parts. The first part will be strictly dealing with golden jackals, and I will show you the latest data originating from the whole genome sequencing concerning golden jackal in Europe and in the entire range in relation to its migration routes and demography, present and in the future. The second part will be devoted to hybridization of the golden jackal with dogs and a little bit with wolves. How does it look like on the global scale? And then I would like to mention a case concerning hybridization of the golden jackal and its introgression by purpose. There are some crazy people willing to make new species. So this is just the case, but the case by purpose. And then a little bit about some studies which were done quite many years ago concerning the domestication of a carnivore, but it's not a dog. But I think it should give a good basis to judge how the domestication may follow and how much time evolutionary force is needed to domesticate a mammal, whereas humans can do it in much shorter time. So, first part, migration routes and demography. First, I would like to draw your attention to our paper, which was published in 2015 in PLOS, and it was the first paper describing the situation concerning the expansion of the golden jackal across Europe. The problem was just how the species should be judged. Is it a lion, invasive species, or it is just a natural migration? So we had a call from European Commission asking us to describe a short note with the information how this new species, new in many countries species, should be treated. So what was clear just from this studies that the golden jackal wasn't introduced to Europe by humans, but it is a natural migration, so it shouldn't be treated as an alien species. In this case, these molecular techniques really helped to save many lives of jackals, because there were already some countries, especially in the northern part of Europe, which started to treat the species as an invasive species. And this is just a little bit about the history of the distribution of the golden jackal in Europe. This slide comes from the paper by Spasov and Acosta-Pankov, which was published in 2018. And when you will look carefully, so for around the end of the 19th and at the beginning of the 20th century, the distribution was pretty limited, mainly to the Balkans, but relatively stable population was only recorded in 3 places, that means in Thracian region, in Peloponnese, and in Dalmatia. this is even worse situation. This is the point the expansion of the golden jackal started. This is the beginning of the 60s. So you will see there are even question marks in some areas showing that we really don't know where this population is probably disappeared. There was just 2 patches left, one in Dalmatia and one in the Peloponnese Peninsula, where peripheral small populations survived. So, but what about the present situation? Now we are observing enormous and extremely rapid expansion of the species. It has already been, in recent years, it has already been collected in subarctic Russia, in Finland, Norway, Netherlands, Germany, southeastern France, and even, and it's proved because I've got the sample in my lab, even northeastern Spain. That's really fantastic. It's well far from the historical range of the species. And this is one of the analyses we didn't publish yet. This is just for Europe, based on 15 microsatellites, around 400 samples analyzed. And just look at the connection between different colors. And when you look carefully, then you will see that from the Caucasus, the yellow color is going up to Estonia, all these Baltic countries. Then blue color dominating maybe in this area and then dispersing northward. Then red color from western part of Hungary moving to Poland and then to Germany. And there is also a single individual we got from Italy, which has more connection to the Black Sea or Caucasian samples than to the samples surrounding his distribution area. And this is just based on all these colors we can speculate about migration routes of the species. This is just showing the one was going from Transcaucasia to the north, reaching Estonia. Then the other one toward the island of Samos through the Asia Minor. And there was a lot of movement from southern and central part of Europe, where there should be also a marked trace. And the movement was also northward to the Baltic countries, to eastern part of Poland, but omitting the Carpathian Arch, and then from Pannonia, most of Hungary, to Poland and Germany through the Moravian Gate. And this is a closer look. What's really interesting, this is the fact that this Estonian sample started to expand. They started to move into the southern direction. So individuals originally designed to be Estonian are also found in Latvia. So this dispersion is in different direction, although most of that is going to the north. But this is another perspective. This perspective is based on the whole genome sequencing for the entire range of the jackal globally. These are just samples based on SNPs. In this analysis we use 20,000 SNPs for different regions, and this shows what are the similarities based on this whole genome sequencing between different clusters. And as you see, this is South India. Jala was mentioning about differences between southern and northern India. Southern India and northern India and Iran, they are grouped together, although the southern Indian jackals are different. Then there is a cluster central and southern Europe, including Greece and Adriatics. Then the Samos Islands, as you know, this island is it's a Greek island very close to the coast of Anatolia. And we have a group of two clusters, practically, one belonging to the Baltics and one to the Caucasus. So also at the global scale, using this whole genome sequencing, there are shown some affinities between different populations. And this picture proves that this expansion from the Caucasus took place to the Caucasus. This is another proof of what we first said in our paper in 2015. And this is, again, we use different colors showing different clusters and the whole range of the JACKAL. So just 8 clusters, as you see, they are different colors. So we have Southern India, Northern India, Iran, Caucasus, Samos Island, Baltic countries, and so on. This paper has been submitted to Biological Conservation, and today I got a reply that first reviews came and they are good, so it should be published soon. What can we see from these pictures? First, look at the values. I'm not sure if you can see them, but look at different values. At the top, there is an allelic richness. Usually, we expect that in front of any expansion, allelic richness and heterozygosity observed is lower than in the center because of the Fandel effect. But here, when you look carefully, please, here it's allelic richness, this green color, 125. So just typical for the Baltic countries. Then allelic richness, for example, from this central south, 124. So the same. Then here, this blue color, Caucasus, mainly Caucasus, 129. In India, southern India, 131, and here northern India and Iran, 136. So when you look carefully, then you will start knowing that the observed values are against the theoretical assumptions, because these values at the top should be lower than those in the center of the species distribution. So, what can we say? What it happens? Does it happen? Mainly because this genetic diversity we are observing in front of the expansion is due to complex expansion routes. That means there were multiple waves of colonization from different SARS populations. As you see, JACKAL, Estonia here. One SARS could be from here, one from here, one from here. So several waves met in the Baltic countries, and they mix it up, and then we are getting very good heterozygosity observed, good richness, similar to the center of the species distribution. This time, I would like to draw your attention to this drawing B. And this is 1,000 years ago. The X-scale axis shows 1,000 years ago, ranging from 0 to 150. And this is NE, number...
Effective population.
Yes, exactly. And it's ranging, unfortunately, it's not on the scale. It's ranging from 0 to 4,500. And there are some jumps and drops. This drawing shows the situation, demographic situation for Southern and Central Europe. This shows the same for the Caucasus. And you will see that there are some drops, but at the same time, when we look carefully, so for the Caucasus, the first jump can be recorded around here. For Southern and Central Europe at the same time, but also here, about 20,000 years ago. So, what can we tell just based on this drawing? That there were at least two ways of demographic expansion for the jackals from Southern and Central Europe. The first started something like 120,000 years ago. So at the same time when the expansion of the jackal started in the Caucasus. And the second one started something like 20,000 years ago. And this finding is supported also by studies Jala presented to us by Yumnam et al., which were published in 2015, based on mitochondrial DNA. So there are at least two proofs about this expansion which occurred a long time ago. So conclusions based just on the drawings I show you. First, that this demographic expansion of the jackal and the dynamic changes we already observed maybe date back to the Pleistocene. The problem is that there are no fossils from the Pleistocene. When you are looking at Europe, the oldest fossils which were really well documented originate from the end of the 15th century. What happened with this fossil in the Pleistocene, we don't know. But we may assume that perhaps the population along the Adriatic coast survived from this time, and that's why this population has some mixing signals which cannot be so simply explained as in the case of other populations. But in any case, neither in the Caucasus, where the oldest fossils of jackals date back a few thousand ago, nor in Europe, there are no Pleistocene jackal remains. And also, just based on the picture I show you, we can also prove that the expansion of the jackal was from Southern Asia, or even Southeast Asia, we don't know, because material from Southeast Asia is practically cannot be used. But jackals, then, let's say, if this expansion took place 20 years ago, what happened with these jackals? At the same time, the expansion, similar expansion was observed for example, gray wolves, red foxes, and brown bears, which survived this period, all these glacial, interglacial changes, which impacted the distribution in a similar way. We assume that probably living conditions were not too good for the jackal. It required higher temperatures, we know from some analysis, and a certain level of precipitation. So probably golden jackal was the only carnivore from the group we are talking about which wasn't successful in its expansion 20 years ago. And now it's taking the opportunity. So I would like also to mention that there were multiple ways of colonization, and there are which we can observe recently, and it seems like a continuation of a long-term process of the species expansion from Asia. And the other point I have already mentioned about is this: in the front of this colonization there is preserved genetic diversity unexpectedly, but because of multiple ways of colonization with different population sources. And now the part about hybridization of dogs and wolves. So we know that, fantastic, we have a rapid expansion, but there are also some problems, negative impact on local wildlife, transmission of disease and parasites, and as well hybridization with other canis. So we know that hybridization, of course, we need good methods, good markers to prove, because this is a complex evolutionary process which may increase or decrease the fitness of the white taxa. And from the perspective of conservation management, hybridization between wild and domesticated species have a really significant impact on the evolutionary process. So this is just a short presentation. What's going with the hybridization? You know, generally there is more negative effects of hybridization than positive ones. Among these negative ones, one of the most important is genetic swamping. This is the situation when the gene pool of the white species is replaced by the domestic species, which makes a harm to the white species. It's the most frequent situation. Of course, there are some other points like progression from domestic animals, outbreeding depression, when the white animal is losing some abilities, allowing him to better survive in the natural environment, extinction, loss of reproductive output, and something what we may relatively frequently observe in the case of hybrid morphological anomalies. But at the same time, there are some positives and neutral things. For example, among these positives, we are thinking about hybrid speciation. That means creation of new species due to hybridization between two other species, or some adaptive variation. A good example can be given on this adaptive variation, can be given, for example, by coyotes and wolves. These crossbreds have larger body mass, move forward, and are better adapted to new environment. Also, the feeding niche is larger, so they profited because of this hybridization. And of course, it may also increase genetic diversity, especially in impoverished population, getting intermediate phenotypic traits, but also there are some neutral things when we cannot say usually what's the impact of this phenomenon. So based on a review of 115 studies on mammals, it has been already said that negative consequences are much higher than the positive ones or neutral ones. But generally, perhaps this number is not proper because we are more sensitive to negative consequences. So it's our social approach. We are biased. And probably this number should be slightly different, but in any case, hybridization, although taking the place all the time and since long time, is treated as a negative force. So hybridization is facilitated by several factors. For example, usually hybridization is successful in the case of recent divergence, like in the case within the genus Canis. And usually then there is incomplete reproductive isolation, either pre or post zygotic, and we expect that this relatively frequent hybridization usually leads to the production of fertile offspring, which may cross back to the parental population. This is just some photos showing hybrids from the study, very nice study published by Galov et al. In 2015. I would like to draw your attention. These are golden jackal dog hybrids. This is F1. And when you look here, you will see the pigmentation, the pigmentation, but partly joined digits here on the mid fingers. And this is probably the son of that hybrid. This is back cross to the dog, a male, and here there is a big lobe. But of course, color is also quite different. And so in this study, Galov and co-authors use different markers. They use biparental and uniparental markers. And just to know, then if there are some studies using mitochondrial DNA, that means going through maternal line, then we can check if examined individuals carry sequences identical to one of the species. And then if it's a case like was proved by Galov in the case of these hybrids, then we can tell about maternal ancestry. At the same time, some people are using specific introns which are characteristic for dogs, and they are never met in pure jackals. So in the case of two males, these introns were discovered, single finger Y-link introns were discovered in two hybrids. One son was the son of the female, and that suggested dog paternal ancestry. And at the same time, you see, this is not a jackal, like a black melanistic form, but this is also back cross to the jackal, and there is a small fragment of 3 base pairs deleted in one of the genes which decides about the black color in Canis. For example, these North American wolves, they have exactly the same deletion. So the same fragment was found in the male. So they had 3 hybrids and one of them was black. And this is the same situation, but genetically at the general view, just neutral markers, not this biparental markers. And there is almost 36 of genetic variability explained by this picture. And you see red color, these are jackals, blue color are dogs, and there are hybrids between them. Then in the mid is F1 having almost half of ancestry from the jackal and half from the dog. And this is back cross to the jackal, and this is back cross to the dog.
Microsatellites?
Sorry?
These are microsatellites?
Yes, yes. And this is another analysis which can be based on microsatellites. As you see, this is a structure of genetic structure based on microsatellites. In the case of dogs in red, then you have jackals, and then you have simulated genotypes for different generations. This is for F1, F2, back cross to jackal. You see, back cross has much higher green color than in the case of F1 or F2. Second back cross, even less, and the same situation in the case of dogs. And here we have hybrids. And it's clear that the proportion of jackal and dog is almost the same. This is the back cross to the dog, much more colorful, red color, and back cross to the jackal. And this is the picture, the latest picture from the tape I was mentioning about. The good news is that it's just almost accepted. We have to reply to reviews, which were quite positive. So this is the entire range, historical range of the jackal. And when you look at the situation of hybrids, green, red color means the proportion of jackal. This is based on 20,000 SNPs. That means the whole genome sequencing, but selecting some positions. So, golden jackal, free-ranging dogs, grey wolves. When you will look carefully, you will see that there are some F1 individuals showing the similar proportion of jackal and dog ancestry, usually jackal and dog. There is a little bit of wolves in the genotype of these individuals, but proportion is relatively small. And then there are some individuals, or that one is probably F1 as well, there are some individuals representing back crosses to the jackal. We don't see any back crosses to the dogs in this situation. And the same just for this F1 individual. So in this study, in which we had more than 100 jackals, only 3 F1 hybrids has been discovered and 15 back crosses. Mainly F2, F3, but also some F4, but it's very hard to say afterwards which back cross it is. Up to F3, it's okay. And you see the portions of ancestry in each individual. In the Belarus, Hungary, and Romania. And this is another picture. So I have already said about this, that allelic richness, heterozygosity expected and heterozygosity observed is relatively high in front of the jackal distribution. And this is just jackal, but a hybrid of a dog and coyote. Very beautiful. I couldn't stand up without showing this to you. And conclusion. So what we know, there are back crosses, and we can track these back crosses, quite several generation back. So we are sure that these jackal dog hybrids are fertile. So the number in nature is probably higher than we expect, because there were some individuals, hybrid individuals, we could prove that the phenotype is not different from the one of the maternal species, or paternal maternal species, So phenotypically, they look like jackals, but they are hybrids. So we need more genetics to be sure what we are dealing with. So this is mainly hybridization between dogs and jackals. And wolves and golden jackals, we can say only that there is a weak evidence, like the same what was already stated by Mora et al. For Bulgaria wolves with mixed ancestry with jackals. So in future studies, we would like to look at the genetic diversity, but caused by hybridization, and focusing on adaptive alleles for key traits, which may facilitate range expansion. For example, we had a talk about urban wolves, but coyotes did it already a long time ago. So, and it has already improved that there are some genetical parts of the genome, for example, observed on canine chromosome 6, which are associated with the social interest of animals. So they can be even hypersocial. They don't have fur, they are easily going into interaction with humans. But of course, coyotes are smarter than we think. So what they did in the case of aggression from the humans, because they can live in New York, Los Angeles, and some other large American cities, so they changed their activity spatially and temporally. They started to be more nocturnal than usually to avoid humans. So the same perhaps may be observed in the case of wolves, but I think we need much more studies on genetics and genes under selection, which, for example, can be used to check tameness or boldness of these animals, how they are going into interaction, and if this interaction is supported by the genome. So, but we can also expect that this hybridization rates will be increasing due to fragmentation, destruction, synergization, and what was proved for the jackal, climate warming. And now about hybridization and back crosses by purpose. I would like to show you just one, but quite interesting example. And just a short introduction, because certainly during some conferences you've been you heard about hybridization and introgression, and people are using introgression, hybridization at the same time. But genetically it's not the same. Hybridization is in the case when two species interbreed between each other. So they belong to different populations, two different species. But introgression is in the case when they back cross to one of the parental species. So these are two terms which should be somehow separate. Oh, and this is the case of hybridization by purpose. The Russians are very clever, despite of the war in Ukraine. Sometimes there are clever people really. So there was a hybrid created by Russia, which came from mixture of two Laponian reindeer herders and two Turkmen golden jackals. And the breeding started in 1975, and this breed was developed for Aeroflot airline security. You can see this reindeer herder, jackal, and what do you expect? Tell me. So, an animal with patches, what do you expect? We need to talk.
Black and white. Black and white animal.
Black and white. Okay. Where is it?
And white.
Oh, wait. So there was a huge media report about it, how they found a jackal nose for the job. Oh, yes, this is the Sulimov dog. You know, they are quite variable, but pretty, huh? Like Petis. So the dog is the back cross of jackal, golden jackal, and dog to the dog, and it's assumed to be a very new breed, can be found only in Russia. Aeroflot is not selling this breed to anybody else. It's said to be the best sniffer dog in the world, because jackals have very good sniffing, so they use that for that. So it's used, I saw some photos, it's used at main Russian airports to sniff explosives, and as many as 12 components of bombs can be discovered by them. You see, jackals, that's why we are busy with jackals. Leave wolves, jackals, focus on jackals. And this is just, we've been talking about domestication. I will have, domestication is something different, but I would like to draw your attention to one of the programs which also started in Russia, I don't know why, but that was also a domestication. Can you imagine? This is a silver fox. Look at this, you know. But sometimes some animals may behave like this. But it was a program with scientific basis. So this is the story of this domestication. Which in 1950s started breeding silver foxes, which were taken from Prince Edward Island in Canada to Russia with the goal to domesticate them. So they were always looking, each generation they were looking for individuals which show the least fair of humans. And after a little bit more than 10 generations, can you imagine, 10 generations, it's written several, but I know for sure after more than 10 generations. So most foxes show no fear of humans. They like petting, they like to lick human caretakers to show their affection. 10 generations. Evolution needed many thousand years. Russia did it in 10 generations. So, after all these experiments, you were right, there were some spotted coats, floppy ears, curved face, and other physical attributes which can be attributed to domesticated animals. And that appears, it appears that findings confirm the alliance hypothesis that these behavioral and physical traits, which can be found in domesticated animals mainly, could be traced to a collection of genes that confer to propensity to tameness. And this is the project about tame animals. It's not a real domestication, but nevertheless. But there were also some complaints that when these foxes were taken from Prince Edward Island, they have already been domesticated in some way, because there are some photos from 1920s showing some foxes in hands of breeders. So we are not sure, but on the other hand, it was a great achievement showing that we can do this something enormous. Yes, this is the silver fox, if you like to. What's about the jackal future, you know, because we are talking about migration, hybrids, but how it may turn out. So this is just the analysis concerning projected changes in climatic suitability from 2021 to 2100. Green color means better area. So if, for example, you are from the UK, don't expect jackals there. Unless humans will bring them. But you see, Netherlands is already on the map. So they are even using areas which are not so proper for them. You know, the expansion is about that. But it's also clear that the places with the original distribution are not properly suited for them. But human influence is so high that we cannot decide what will be going. Certainly, there are climatic changes going into direction supporting further movement of jackals to northern and western and eastern Europe. So we know this is the future of jackals, but at the same time we need recommendations for conservation and management of the species. What to do with hybrids? Should we have the same approach like in the case of hybrids of wolves? We need some methodological standard. So I think this is a good thing to think about it and to distribute the message widely. So thank you for your attention.